We're about to begin, and for everyone's benefit, this has been an amazing team effort. Sometime in September, John Scurich called on a late Sunday night and said, we've got this amazing opportunity. And Andrew Jackson students, tune into this, because this really gets to you more than you're going to realize very quickly. And the realization was that, and Rita and Floyd, you and Bill and Chris of the Miro Foundation are present. For over a year, we've been planning for our present students and alumni to be able to visit Colonial Williamsburg, because our team of actors and actresses are amazing, as you'll shortly see. Well, suddenly, Williamsburg was coming to us. Imagine that. And so this project was born as a result of that. And what you're about to see is what actually occurred 200 years ago today. The speeches that are made, or the actual speeches that were given, with the difference that the language was a bit modernized, so our Andrew Jackson kids don't go, really? Right? That they can understand what's being said. And each of the men who present actually presented on that fateful day. And an interesting piece of information that some people have likened his visit, the Marquis's visit, to the first Mardi Gras, because there was such ruckus and such excitement and so much enthusiasm, as we will attempt to portray for you guys. So, for you Andrew Jackson kiddos, who in the world is this man? Well, this man was not too much older than you. He was 19 years old when he heard that the people of this continent were interested and trying very hard to develop a country built upon democracy and freedom for all. And he left France against the wishes of the king, against his family's wealth and capacity, and came and joined none other than George Washington in one of the darkest times in our early start. And very shortly became a driving, creative force in the journey. Modern historians have referred to him as the French founding father, because without his aid and his influence with the King of France and bringing the French into the war for our independence, we would not be sitting here as one nation under God, but instead a collection of colonies still very much like Canada, connected. Like Canada, you understand? Like Canada, people dismiss that and think it's just foolishness. Like Canada, still connected to the British Crown. And we, ladies and gentlemen, have had the privilege to continue to build and evolve and to become where we are, and for you young folks, for the next level of what we ought to become. And so with that, ladies and gentlemen, we're excited to begin. Good morning once again. What a privilege it is for us when you think about birthdays, anniversaries. Everybody loves to celebrate, right? Well, today we have the privilege to celebrate a most unique anniversary for our own community. 200 years ago today, probably about this time of the day, the Marquis actually came up the river on the riverboat Natchez at Chalmette battlefield with minimum levies, nothing like today, and was greeted by a throng of unbelievable numbers of people. As some people have said, potentially, New Orleans' first Mardi Gras, at least in numbers, and in excitement and in ruckus, dancing and food and people awaiting. Probably in America's history, there's never been any single individual who has had as many people to come out and welcome as did the Marquis. And we are so honored in New Orleans that our story is once again being connected to the national story. That the Battle of New Orleans was in fact the completion of America's journey out of colonialism. We are so proud, and you kids from Andrew Jackson Middle School, literally named for the man who stood against all odds against the most powerful army in the world, who thought they were walking into New Orleans and were going to whistle their way right in. And the story completely changed. January 8th, 1815, no longer did a man or a woman bow a knee to a king or a queen in this part of the world. A fact that is so easily lost. The opportunity for the journey. And you guys, the journey's not been easy because there's never been anybody like us. There's never been a people who have had the privilege and the opportunities to form and to shape their own nation. For so long, a king or a queen told the people who they were and what they weren't and what they were. Suddenly, Americans have had the opportunity to be told, you can be almost whatever you want to be. Isn't that exciting, you guys? And what's so important about today is that one person can make a difference. So easily we think things are beyond us. It's bigger than us. But one man was willing to forsake home, fortune, family, and a language barrier besides. Think about that one. Don't we think about language barriers today? And came to our country and presented himself to George Washington and said, here I am. How can I help you? And his creativity, his dedication inspired not only George Washington, but the American troops that knew, are we losing our mind standing against people that are so beyond us? And suddenly they saw it could be done. And today, you guys, here in New Orleans, we have the privilege to re-celebrate this whole story of us and them up there building this amazing country.
Would everyone please rise as I present the Marquis de Lafayette?
Please all take your ease. It is truly a delight to be here in Nouvelle-Orléans and the great state of Louisiane. Thank you so much for your kind welcome.
Good morning, mes amis. My friends, we are here together to celebrate you as young Americans and this amazing man, the Marquis de Lafayette. As some of you may know, I am Jacques Villeray, the first native-born governor of our esteemed state of Louisiana. I served in 1815 directly after the Battle of New Orleans. My home is now the site of the Valero oil refinery. 200 years ago today, on the eve of April 10th, the steamboat Natchez arrived on the river in front of the Chalmette battlefield. This man, who was the guest of the nation, stepped ashore to the sound of cannon fire and cheers from a large crowd. Despite the relentless bad weather and the battlefield's distance from the city, people had gathered to see him, filling the levee with excitement. His reason for coming to this sacred site was to give honor to the great men and women who so gallantly fought to stave off the British during the American Revolution. He had his blood, sweat, and tears laid out on that battlefield for the founding of this country. Come, help me applaud our great hero. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the governor of Louisiana, the Honorable Henry Johnson.
Even before Louisiana became a part of the United States, you fought for freedom and justice and shed your blood for liberty, both here in America and in France. Today, Louisiana is honored to welcome someone the entire nation celebrates as a true hero. General Louisiana is proud to have been a participant in the fight for independence during the Revolutionary War through the heroic efforts of Spanish colonial governor Bernardo de Galvez, for whom this great parish is named. We know how much you contributed to the American Revolution and how important your efforts were. The people here care just as much about the principles of freedoms and liberty as the rest of the country. And they are just as determined to protect those rights and liberties that were earned through hard work and sacrifice. Our love for this country is not just words. We can prove it. The grounds of the very Chalmette battlefield is a testament to just that. Right here, Louisiana's soldiers and civilians stood with their fellow Americans, led by the brave General Andrew Jackson. And together defeated a powerful enemy. That victory was one of the greatest in history, achieved against all odds. It not only drove this enemy off this land, but it created a lasting symbol of American strength and courage. It was a victory that any hero like you, who fought at the Battle of Yorktown, would be proud to see and to celebrate. In Louisiana, you will find something truly special, a unique example of how your efforts in the name of liberty have made a lasting impact. This state, founded by French settlers, and still home to many of their descendants, like Governor Villeray, stands proudly as a part of the American Union. Here, French traditions blend seamlessly with the freedoms you fought to secure, proving wrong those who doubted their ability to embrace liberty. Louisiana is living proof of the triumph of freedom and a testament to your incredible work to make this possible. As Governor of Louisiana, and behalf on you, the people of Louisiana, welcome to this sacred place. We are honored to have you here.
The mayor of New Orleans, Monsieur Louis Philippe de Rouffignac, brought greetings.
For your warm welcome. Much thanks. Marquis, as a fellow Frenchman and a lieutenant of artillery in the French army, I honor you. As honorary Brigadier General during the Battle of New Orleans and Colonel of the Louisiana Legion, I salute you. This great city of New Orleans, which I am honored to represent, is overjoyed to welcome you. By agreeing to visit us, you have brought great happiness to our city. We take pride in hosting the guest of the American nation. During your brief time with us, you will no doubt notice the progress made under the wise institutions that grew out of the independence that you fought for. These institutions, along with our extraordinary Constitution that you helped establish, are living proof of your efforts.
Next to greet this great man was Dennis Prier, Recorder of the City Council of New Orleans.
General, as representative of the City Council of New Orleans and as a veteran of the Battle of New Orleans, let me just say that your visit to our city is an event that fills us with pride for many reasons. As members of the great American family, we share the joy felt by our fellow citizens across the Atlantic states in welcoming you, the friend and companion in arms to the legendary George Washington. And as descendants of the French, we feel an even closer connection to your incredible achievements. General, even if you try to downplay your actions, the people of this nation have long made it clear how much they admire you. Citizens from every walk of life honor you as one of the key founders of American independence. The independence we in Louisiana are now proud to share. That independence was recently fought in a war against the most powerful army in the world, where we proved our worth in days of trial that will never be forgotten.
Never to be forgotten!
These events are part of what made Louisianians have the honor of your respect. We are so glad to welcome you here today.
Mon General, your visit to our community and the Chalmette battlefield has been an incredible honor. As you make your way to our illustrious capital city of New Orleans, for the festivities planned for your visit, I would like to acknowledge the many in this capacity that wish you well. I would like to acknowledge the many in this gathering, the soldiers, the citizens, and their descendants, who make up this great parish. They fought for the freedom of the United States in the American Revolution and in the Battle of 1812, which ended right here in New Orleans. We honor them today. The descendants of the French colonialists who settled New Orleans. The Canary Islanders, known as Isleños, who settled St. Bernard with Bernardo de Galvez and Jackson. The Choctaw Indians who served bravely in the Battle of New Orleans. And the free people of color and the enslaved who defended the colony and the state. As to this last group mentioned, it is my pleasure to introduce you to Colonel Joseph Savary and Captain Lewis Simon, representing the city's significant free people of color population. Many of these individuals fought bravely to defend the country and played a vital role in the victory on January 8th, during the Battle of New Orleans. They have requested the honor of meeting you, General, to express their admiration and their gratitude. Colonel Savary and Captain Simon.
General,
Your name fills this nation with joy. The free people of color in Louisiana share in this excitement and wish you your best wishes upon your arrival.
Thank you.
They have asked me to convey their respect and admiration for you, as well as their commitment to the values of freedom itself. Thank you.
General, you were just a young man when one of the most remarkable revolutions in history began in this part of the world. Driven by your love of freedom and justice, you courageously fought for the people's cause. Despite your noble rank, wealth, and favors you enjoyed in the grandest courts of Europe, you followed your calling. You left your hometown and stood on the battlefield alongside the legendary George Washington. And now, after 50 years, your return brings joy, celebrating your dedication to the ideals of freedom and humanity. Everywhere you go, you are met with the love and gratitude of an entire nation, a reward fitting for a hero who has devoted his life to the betterment of humanity.
Hear, hear. Now would everyone please rise as I present the Marquis de Lafayette.
Thank you, dear friend. Please come, take your ease. Distinguished gentlemen, lovely ladies of Nouvelle-Orléans, mesdames et messieurs, chers amis, I, General Lafayette, am so honored and privileged to be here amongst all of you, especially the students present here today. I am a firm believer that the greatest victories in life are not won upon any battlefield, but rather knowledge over ignorance. You are the future of this nation. You too can make a difference. I think back to my life and how much occurred at a very young age. Sadly, my father was killed 1 month shy of my 2nd birthday at the Battle of Minden, August the 1st of 1759 during the 7 Years' War. My mother would pass when I was but 13. So thus I had become an orphan at 13, but my life had been planned for me. At 13, I would become a sous-lieutenant, a 2nd lieutenant, serving in the Mousquetaires Noirs, the Black Musketeers of His Majesty the King. By the age of 16, I would be married. And as you can imagine, that tradition has gone somewhat out of fashion. But nonetheless, it would grow into a marriage of love with the blessings of 4 children, 3 who would survive to adulthood. But my friends, it would be at the age of 19 that I would first hear of this glorious cause of American freedom. For I had been billeted in the eastern part of France, in a city called Metz. And as was commonplace back then, we would often have these grandiose dinner parties with all of the most noble officers in attendance. And there, typically, we would speak about the various subjects of the day. A war that had begun, a war that had concluded, perhaps a new treaty that had been signed, or an innovation in strategy or in tactics. But on one occasion, we had a very special guest, and this guest was none other than the Duke of Gloucester, the brother to the King of England. But unlike his brother, the King of England, the Duke of Gloucester was rather sympathetic to the American cause. In fact, many were of the opinion that he thought America should be free and independent. So, we all listened in on what he had to say. We spoke of the fighting at Lexington and at Concord, of the Grand Congress in Philadelphia, and of course of the great man himself, that of General Washington. And you know, dear friends, it was by the conclusion of that meal that I told my brother officers that I was ready and willing to fight, and if need be, die for this cause. Now I know what you're all thinking. Why, Monsieur le Marquis? Why would you want to go and fight and perhaps die in another man's war? For France and England were not at war at that moment. Why would you want to risk yourself in such an endeavor? Well, I believe you know the answer to that question. For in truth, this has been a war like none other in the history of man. Had it not? This was a war of great ideas, of the freedom, even the liberation of mankind, a war that had embraced the ideas of the great thinkers of what we often refer to as this enlightened age. Some call it an age of reason. Men such as Voltaire, Rousseau, Montesquieu, and Locke. And what were they speaking of? Representation in government of an equality of mankind. That a man, no matter what class in society you might be born, whether you be black or white, Catholic or Protestant, rich or poor, enslaved or free, should not make a difference. But simply by the way in which that person would carry themselves and prove themselves in this world. So it was with this grand inspiration that I decided to come to America and enlist myself in the service of His Excellency General George Washington. Now I would take part in the entirety of the war, fighting in many great battles from Brandywine to Barren Hill, and concluding, of course, in the great siege of Yorktown that concluded 19 October 1781, in which we vanquished the English, just as you, the brave citizens of Louisiana, vanquished the British at the Battle of Nouvelle Orleans. But though with the Treaty of Paris it appeared the war had come to an end, and it had, the revolution was incomplete. I had written His Excellency General Washington right before the war ended, and I spoke of many subjects. Amongst them, chiefly, was the horrible institution of slavery. I said to His Excellency that you would be an even greater man than you already are if you could set the example by emancipating the slaves. Thereby others could follow your example, and you could eradicate this horrible institution. Alas, His Excellency wrote back with many kind words, saying that I was a credit to humanity for making such a suggestion. But he said it could not be done immediately, that it had to be done slowly and through legislation, for fear of a grand slave revolt on par with that of the great Spartacus in the 1st century BC. Well, of course, I believe action speaks louder than words. And I would lend my voice, and will continue to lend my voice, my right arm, my pen, and my purse to eradicate the horrible institution of slavery! My dear friends, I am so sincere in my convictions that had I known I was founding a nation of slavery, I would have never come. My dear friends, that is but one portion of the revolution that is incomplete. There are the indigenous peoples, the Native Americans, of which I had the honor and privilege to have met in my many journeys. But it was back in 1778 where Congress had dispatched me up to Albany, New York. There I was to lead an invasion of Canada. There were several problems with that. First amongst them, the Canadians did not want to become Americans. But regardless, being that that was called off, I was asked by General Philip Schuyler to negotiate a treaty with members of the Iroquois-speaking natives there. Indeed, we simply call them the Iroquois from the language they speak, but they are really 6 nations. That of the Mohawk, the Seneca, the Cayuga, the Onondaga, the Tuscarora, and of course the Oneida. And my negotiations would take place with the Oneida. You must understand, I had never met these peoples before. I had read about them, I had seen wood carvings of them, but I had never met them before, and I was fascinated with them. So much so, and much to my surprise and happiness, they were fascinated with me as well. And many of their tribal elders and sachems decided to adopt me into their tribe. Think of that honor and privilege. I would be bestowed with a new name. My Oneida name is that of Koialea, which means great warrior, which I must admit I did not mind that name in the least. Of the Oneida, their name in their tongue is Oniataka, which means people of the standing stone. Now, I find this fascinating because they believe in their millennia that they have existed, in their generations that have passed, that a stone that juts out from a mountain will endure everything. The passage of time, the storms, the rain, the snow, the sun, but it will remain. But the markings of time will be evident upon that stone. So thus, they are the people of the standing stone. Can you imagine this? They look to the past for the answers to the future. Is that not history, my friends? Can we not all do that? I am fearful that many of those treaties that were made were not abided by the Americans. So I will continue as well to fight for those rights in the hope that those indigenous peoples might also one day be welcome under that banner of American freedom. My friends, it would be when the revolution came to France that I would write a document. It was called the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen. In this said document, I spoke about those natural rights of mankind that all people, regardless of their nation, should be able to enjoy. Many of those rights are, of course, life, liberty, property, the pursuit of happiness, and freedom from oppression. Words that are familiar to you, words that we should all be able to enjoy. And I am hopeful that with this preamble to all French constitutions, these rights and privileges will be welcome to all, not a select few, but to all. My friends, as I come back to America after 40 long years, the last time, of course, setting foot after the Treaty of Paris of 1783, and there seeing His Excellency General Washington for the last time, little did I know. We spent 2 glorious weeks at his beloved Mount Vernon. There we reflected upon the war, the future of this nation. We rode on to Annapolis in Maryland, said goodbye to many of the officers we had the honor and privilege to have served with. Onwards to Marlborough in Maryland, and that is where I would say my goodbyes. But not before the General would say this to me. He said, Monsieur le Marquis, I sincerely believe that the easy part was winning this war. I could not imagine he would say such a thing, after all of the trials and tribulations we had all been through. But he explained himself further by saying, I do believe that the much more difficult part will be for these 13 former colonies that have now formed 13 United States, well, getting along with one another, surviving into the future. Well, my friends, look at how far you have gone. From 13 to 24 United States, you have endured war, civil strife, turmoil, yet you have endured. And why is that? Well, I dare say it is because of the foundation that was built at the price of so much sacrifice and blood by you, the American patriot. And who is the American patriot? Indeed, it is those idealistic individuals who joined because of Washington, of this great cause, of Thomas Paine and his words. But it was also the enslaved, perhaps forced to serve, the free men of color who decided to form a new life, those brave men of the Rhode Island Regiment who were with me as we stormed Redoubt 10 on that fateful night of 14 October 1781, vanquishing the British at Yorktown. It is also the Native American, the Oneida, the Tuscarora, who served right alongside me at the Battle of Barren Hill, many of them giving their lives for what? Not for me, but for you, the American people. It is the camp followers, the women who supported their men upon the march. There is Deborah Sampson, who was a woman who served in the ranks, disguised as a man. She believed so much in the cause that she was willing to give her life for it. That is who the American patriot is. It is all of you, my dear friends. I thank you for your kindness and your hospitality, dear friends. God bless you all, and God bless this great nation of the United States of America.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a privilege to share our amazing young people, their gifts and their talents to bring our story further to life.